No intro for the video, we're just gonna jump right into the questions. First two questions from Raal Santa Ana. How are your Shiba Inu's dogs? Oh, don't even fucking start them yet. I swear to God, if I see that shit in the comment section, I'm banning everyone. And what are their names? And if you had 2 words to tell the YouTube auditor, what would they be and why? Obviously, I give them a nice big fuck you. And now you guys see why I started this video off with that question. But anyway, the names of my 2 dogs are Bacardi and Martini, and they're both brother and sister. Everlasting King wants to know, what is your funniest movie you've watched, and do you think social media affects people? Funniest movie, hands down, Spaceballs. As for social media, it depends on what kind of effect you're talking about. There are positive and negative effects of social media. So the question you asked is so generalized that it's impossible to list or debate all of the actual effects that it could have on someone. For some people, it's been a positive effect. For others, it's negatively impacted them. But I'm sure in some form or way or another, people who use social media have been affected by that motherfucker. Next question from DodoBird123. Do you think that virtual reality, Oculus Rift, Sony's Project Morpheus and shit like that will eventually dominate the gaming industry, or merely be a cool but impractical idea? Personally, I think they're all gonna flop. It's gonna be another project regarding virtual reality that will not be as viable as the creators claim it to be. Look, virtual reality has been around now for over 25 years. Can you think of any other technology that has taken 25 years to advance itself? No, of course not. Most technology is outdated by time it releases, let alone 2 fucking decades. You have 2 to 3 years tops in technology before your genre feels old. Yet here we are, all these years later, talking about virtual reality being the next best thing. History has shown exactly what customers think of it. It's cool, but it's not worth the money and time for the minimal experience that you're gonna get. Project Morpheus is gonna be a useless peripheral that nobody buys, and once the novelty of virtual reality wears off again, it will go back to being the useless gimmick that it really is. Next 2 questions from MI2 Lethal. He wants to play a little bit of word association with some of these developers in studios, so let's appease the motherfucker. Rockstar makes a damn good campaign. Activision, greed, greed, and more greed. Naughty Dog, currently the best studio hands down. EA, greed, greed, and more greed. Ubisoft, delay, delay, and more delay. Bethesda, utterly fucking incompetent. BioWare, one of the best studios out there. Microsoft, now this one's tricky because you asked for Microsoft, and that would mean the whole company and not just the Xbox division. So for that, as a whole company, I would say falling behind all their competitors. Blizzard exploits the stupidest fans possible. And finally, Treyarch deserves to be burned down to the ground. Second question, have you ever pirated any games, movies, songs, etc.? And what is your opinion on people that do this? Again, throwing in 2 fucking questions into one goddamn question, motherfucker. As far as movies and games, no, I've never stolen that. But I have stolen music. Fuck that shit. I could just come to YouTube and download pretty much any song from here on KeepVid and change it to a music file and I'm all set. But here's the problem. When it's done in bulk and things are mass pirated, that's when you're going to get companies to react. It's one thing if you want to swipe a song, you get a movie that you really want to see. But when this is your only way of getting your entertainment, you have to expect a backlash from the greedy artists and companies who are losing out on money. When pirating is widespread and companies lose shitloads of money, there's going to be a massive backlash against the pirates. A great example. Napster killed music. There is no doubt the effect Napster had all those years ago where you could share music. The ability to move music over the internet led to declining sales for almost all albums. It led to record labels to taking big losses and not signing any artists unless they knew they could make a hit out these motherfuckers. It led musicians to leave making music and go make movies or TV shows or do whatever the fuck they're doing. In the case of Bono, whine about every fucking thing because he has free time on his hands. Go make music, motherfucker. Stop crying. But anyway, top name artists stopped making music because the money wasn't the same. This is why the current generation of artists are far less talented than the prior generations. The ability to share music without paying for it affected the industry and the talent of the music we have now. It's why people like Kanye West are still around. It's why talentless fucks like Kesha continue to make auto-tune songs for money, and why an asshole like Drake is a wannabe sports groupie since his music is fucking garbage. Now, apply this to movies and games. If gaming studios aren't making money off of games anymore, and they're not pulling in profit, why would they bother creating games? Why would they make AAA games if people are just going to go ahead and pirate them and they lose out on their revenue? The more people pirate, the more steps companies are going to take to protect their money. It's one thing if you pirate a game here or there, a movie here or there, but when your entire entertainment collection is pirated, all you're doing is giving companies a reason not to put out movies and games for other people. Next two questions from ZeroJon69. What would you do if your channel ever got as popular as PewDiePie? What is his name? PewDiePie? I don't even, or some other big, I don't even know how to pronounce that motherfucker's name. I don't really give a shit. Second question, do you have any tips for people just starting out channels or people having trouble getting their channel to take off? Now, I've answered that second question, but I'll get to that in a second. As for my channel, nothing will change. You know, if I manage to become as popular as these money-whoring channels that exploit people for views, yeah, I said it, I ain't gonna lie. I'll tell you right now, I did it just keeping this as a hobby, so there's no need for me to change. The only time you're going to notice people change on their channel is when money's involved. For me, this has never been about money. So the biggest difference between me and those other channels is regardless of how much money I make or I don't make, nothing's ever going to change for me. Now, as for people starting out on YouTube or whatever, you know, you have to decide what you want at a channel before you actually begin it. YouTube is a much different place than it was 6 or 7 years ago. You know, those that got into the game early, they exploited the system for views, subscribers, and monies. They got a huge head start on you. So if you're coming into this for money, you've come to the wrong place. Now, if you're just coming to do this for shits and giggles, then you're coming in at least with the right attitude. But the way YouTube works right now is that larger channels will be always boosted up by YouTube, since YouTube wants to make as much money off of these channels as possible. As for the little channels, you're going to be shitted on all the time because you don't make YouTube enough money. The only thing you can really do is go out there, network, market your channel, and do the best you can to try and fight off the big channels. But I'll tell you right now, it is an uphill battle for anybody that wants to start out their channel now. Next two questions from El Pancho 751. What was the most absurd gaming experience moment that you've ever witnessed or ever had to go through? And second, do you see yourself buying another Call of Duty title in the future? You know, the only thing I can think of are those endurance races from Gran Turismo and shit like that, where they had like no fucking save data. You know, something like a 24-hour race or whatever the fuck it was. You know, you couldn't even stop and save the motherfucker. So you either had to sit there for 24 hours trying to complete it, or get 2 or 3 people to complete that shit, or just do what some other people did, pause the game, go to sleep, try it again later. As far as Call of Duty, Ghost 2 would be my next potential game, and even then, I would want to see what it looks like before making a commitment to it. You know, I'm not buying Advanced Warfare. I've said that for a while. I just don't like how it looks. I refuse to give Treyarch any more money. So the next possible game I would even consider would be Ghost 2. Next question is from Terry Hestigos 22. What is the top 5 albums of 2013 and digital distribution versus physical media? I'll tell you right now, nothing deserves top 5 album. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, listen, I don't even like the music nowadays. I can't even stand it. I turn on the radio and I look for my old songs because I don't even like the music nowadays. As for the distribution, I would take MP3 any day. Next question from Jens Nilsson. If you were given the power to establish world peace, but the consequences would be you would be forced to play 5 hours of Black Ops 1 with the YouTube auditor every day for the rest of your life on the PlayStation 3 with a shitty dial-up connection, would you still do it? Now, let me get this straight. You want me to sacrifice my happiness for everyone else? Oh, hell fucking no. You could have put anything in that deal for me, and the answer would have been 100% no every single time. Because here's the reality. Humans will never live in peace. Never. We are a violent species. We have been a violent species since our inception. We are going to be a violent species for the foreseeable future. There will never, ever be such a thing as world peace, because as a species, humans are not peaceful creatures. We are violent motherfuckers. Next question from Shadow5784. If you were in charge of Sony, would you have kept the PlayStation 4 the same, or would have gone for an all-gaming console, nothing media-related? Also, would you have tried to cram more power into it to make it appeal more to PC gamers? Honestly, considering PlayStation 4 sales figures right now, there's not much you can really second-guess on the console. You know, there's nothing wrong with having a few social issues and features and shit like that, especially if the features were things that gamers were asking for, but keeping the focus on the console while offering new features that PlayStation 3 didn't have has been working for Sony, so it's kind of hard to second guess all their decisions. As for making it more powerful, you have to remember, that comes at a price. Unlike PlayStation 3, Sony wanted to keep the price down this time around and have it profitable from day one. I'm sure they could have put a little more under the hood in terms of processing power and graphic cards and whatnot, but that would have required a price increase to make up for the extra cost, and that would have been passed on to the gamers, so Sony obviously wanted to avoid that. Francisco Huizar wants to know, what is the craziest rumor that I've ever heard about myself? To be honest, I have never heard a rumor about myself. No, really, I have never heard a single rumor about me, so there is absolutely nothing I can use to answer this question. Next two questions from Dandey. What platform would you most likely use if PlayStation didn't exist, and what card do you own? I assume I play on Xbox, mainly because it's so similar to PlayStation 4. You know, it'd either be that or Nintendo. Those are the only two choices I have. And what car do you own? Now, here's the thing. Living in New York, I don't need to own a car. I drive somebody else's car, But under my own name, I do not own my own car. Next two questions from My Gaming is Legal, and basically he wrote a whole paragraph in the top of the motherfucker. But the gist of it is, do you believe that companies are using medicine to help humanity or to basically make profit off of sickness? You know, in your wall of text, you pretty much answer the question yourself. There isn't any money in curing. The money is in the treatment. You know, pharmaceutical companies know this. And curing ailments means you're likely not going to make any money in the long term off of the illness. That's why they look for vaccines instead of cures. There's more money in vaccines. There's more money in ongoing treatments. It's their way of showing that they care, but that they care about money more than anything. And the second question, do you believe in the Illuminati and that it's a secret government group and with all their spying conspiracies and all this other shit and whatnot? No, and I think people who do believe in it have been watching way too many fucking movies. You know, there was a real group years ago called the Illuminati, and they were in the 1700s, and it acted as sort of a political group that opposed the churches and politics and shit like that. And thus, it was suppressed by Bavarian rulers and the Catholic Church and whatnot. And since that time, they were portrayed as an evil society or a cult, and that they were trying to take over the world or ruin the world and whatnot. You know, since that time, there's been absolutely no proof that they managed to survive. And most of the groups that want to call themselves Illuminati are usually just full of shit using the name because they know it was a popular urban legend back in the day. Next question from Dead Killer 12, although he wants to go by Helm Knight 12 on PSN. I don't know what the fuck you want to go by. Will you have any horror games on your channel, and will you be buying Assassin's Creed Unity? As far as Assassin's Creed Unity, I don't know yet. I'm still waiting on the reviews. It looks good, but I'm still going to hold off and see what the reviews are as far as what they have for the co-op portion of the game. As for horror games, I mean, do you mean things like Outlast or something like that? You know, probably not, because like I said, games that go boo, they don't scare me. You know, I'm not easily frightened by things in games like that, so I personally wouldn't go out and actually buy the game. However, that doesn't stop people from sending that to me as part of the Hipfire commentary series. But as far as my own gameplay, no, you're not going to see any survival horror games or shit like that. Next question from BMan7082. What games are you planning on getting for the PlayStation 4? And will your video schedule stay the same or go back to the old routine once you finish the Goodbye PlayStation 3 series? You know, I'm actually glad someone asked this question because it saves me from doing a full video. I'll tell you right now, once the Goodbye PlayStation series is over, I'm going back to my old schedule. As for what games I plan on getting, Destiny is an obvious game, getting that day one. Little Big Planet's obviously going to be there, as well as Uncharted 4. There's some other games that I have my eye on, obviously Assassin's Creed, The Crew, The Division, and shit like that. I'm holding off on the Order 1886 because I'm just kind of curious about whether or not that's actually going to be a good game and shit like that. Drive Club doesn't interest me, so I'm probably not going to get that one. Evolve looks good, but it just doesn't look like it has enough content to keep me playing up in that motherfucker. And the final game that I'll buy, whenever the hell they finally decide to announce it, is going to be Mass Effect 4. Next question from Jayden Pierce. Did you ever finish the Modern Warfare 3 Crap Ops or World at War campaigns, or even attempt them? So what are your thoughts? Yes, I did finish them, and I'm going to talk about them when I actually get to the Goodbye PlayStation 3 series. So I'm not going to blow my load here on this video. And what was the funniest experience you ever had? Now, this is the kind of thing that you have to be there and know the person to find funny. Otherwise, you're not going to get the appeal of the story. Now, years ago, we were teenagers before we had cars and shit. So I'm going to say like 15 years old or so. Me, Going Postal, and another friend, we wanted to go shoot pool, and we were going to head to a billiards hall a few miles away. Going Postal's sister worked there, so we knew that we could play for cheap instead of paying the normal price at any of the close billiards hall. So we hopped on our bikes and we headed out. As we were riding, Going Postal noticed something was wrong with his bike. His back tire kept getting stuck on the frame of the bike. So when he was riding, the bike was stopping short on him. It was pissing him off. And out of frustration, he started throwing the bike around. He threw it on the floor, threw it against the light pole, a mailbox. He rolled it into the middle of the street and then had to chase that motherfucker down. Anyways, we continued on like this for a few miles until we came to an overpass. Below the overpass was a train graveyard, and finally, Going Postal had enough of his bike and he just flipped the fuck out. He got off the bike, he picked it up, and he chucked it over the 8-foot protective fence all the way down to the train graveyard. And then walked away like nothing. You know those memes of how good guys never look back at explosions in movies? Well, he just walked off like nothing and went the rest of the way on foot. Me and my other friend, we were cracking the fuck up. I mean, how do you just throw a bike off of a bridge? I mean, what possesses you to get off a bike and say, you know what? Fuck this, I had enough of this shit. And chuck it over an 8-foot protective fence. He just didn't give a fuck. He was so pissed off. To this day, we still talk about that story because we didn't actually think he would throw his bike off of a bridge just because it annoyed him. Now, for these next 4 viewers, I don't know if this is the same fucking person who just kept changing his name or some shit. But you're gonna notice there's 3 people with almost the same exact name, and then there's one person who alludes to his friend asking, they go, I don't know, you know what? They made either 4 accounts or 3 accounts or some shit. They all ask questions. So I'm gonna answer them one by one, but these motherfuckers all have the same damn name. First up, Chris Choppa Gunner wants to know, what is your opinion on the James Bond films if you watch them, especially the latest release, Skyfall with Daniel Craig? And second, did you ever pick up the James Bond games from Russia with Love, Everything or Nothing, GoldenEye before Activision fucked it all up? Now, as for the movies, I haven't watched them all, you know, mainly just the good ones and shit like that. And Skyfall was probably the best of the current group that's been released all these past couple of years. You know, when you look back at the Pierce Brosnan ones, some of them were really cheesy compared to today's standards. Oh man, so it's hard watching some of the older ones compared to the newer ones, but I do think Skyfall is one of the better ones in the series. As for the second question, the only James Bond game that I ever played was GoldenEye. I never got into any of the other James Bond games. Next question from Prince Zaakhi or Zaakhi, whatever his name is. Now, he obviously mentions that his friend Chris Choppa Gunner asked the question, so then he goes ahead and he asks it again. He wants to know who was my favorite actor that played in James Bond movies. That would be Sean Connery. You always have to go with the original. There's no way around that joint. Second question, will you ever give Rockstar a chance again for Grand Theft Auto 6 if they do betas? With a beta? Absolutely. You know, I still plan on getting Grand Theft Auto games, at least for their campaigns, because they make damn good campaigns, but without a beta, or at least a preview of their online portion of it, I'm not going to return to their online portion of the game. Next question, and this one comes from just Chris Gunner, not Chris Choppa Gunner, but Chris Gunner. You seem to like rap and hip-hop, so what do you think of the poor excuse for music we call modern rap today? Oh god, man, I could do a rant on this shit for fucking hours alone. But like I said earlier, Napster and iPod killed music, and the only people we have left today are assholes who think they make good music. The biggest problem besides the assholes is how the genre has changed. You know, 25 to 30 years ago, hip-hop was a lyrical story. Listen to any old school artist and it was a story being told, as well as lyrical battles and social issues that affected them around that time. About 15 years ago, Puffy turned hip-hop into bragging about money and women and about luxury. You look at Biggie's first album and the song Juicy, and you see that a story was being told as to how he got to where he was. Then in his second album, more money, more problems. I mean, shit, man. Once hip-hop changed to show you how much money you had, as opposed to how little you had, it all went downhill from there. You know, throwing file sharing where people aren't giving these idiots any more money. And this is what you get stuck with. Assholes like Kanye West, Drake, Lil Wayne, and other jackasses who put out garbage because nobody else is making better music. And question number 2, how come you didn't pick up any basketball games on this gen? Because I'm a fucking Knicks fan, that's why. Oh man, they were fucking terrible. You know, it was embarrassing taking them and winning a championship with them even in a fucking video game. They were that fucking awful that I wouldn't even buy a game for them. And now we come to the final Chris Gunner. You see what I mean? We had 2 Chris Gunners, a Chris Choppa Gunner. I ain't gonna get into that bullshit, man. Anyway, first question, he basically wants to know who's gonna come out on top in this console generation. If you were to ask me who do I think is gonna make the most in sales at the end of this generation, I think it's gonna mimic exactly what happened in the last generation. Sony is gonna sell the most around the world, while Xbox One is eventually gonna surpass PlayStation 4 in the US only, but it's still not gonna top Sony in total sales when you look at the entire world and all the other countries that the PlayStation is being sold in. And the second question, it says, there have been reports and articles saying this may be the last console generation or whatever the fuck. Do I agree or disagree? I'll tell you right now, I don't know where people get this idea that mobile gaming is going to surpass consoles. You know, it certainly takes a share away from consoles, but that share is mainly the casual market where Nintendo lives. You know, the high-end consoles have nothing to worry about when it comes to Flappy Birds. A hardcore Call of Duty gamer is not going to stop playing Call of Duty to fucking start Farmville. You know what I'm talking about? YouTube channels who whore people for money aren't going to forsake the consoles to play fucking Bejeweled. So anyone who thinks that phones are a threat to consoles needs to seriously get their head out of their ass. The only threat that these games pose are to the shitty low-quality developers who produce shovelware games and novice indie studios who make side-scrollers only. As for the generations themselves, I believe a shorter life cycle makes sense, but at the same time, they might as well just follow a PC model where you're able to update the consoles themselves. You know, giving people the ability to upgrade your internal hardware or parts with better pieces to play higher end games. I'm guessing in the future, they might follow that route again, but they're actually going to put replaceable hardware as the next step. Anyways, that's 2 videos down now, 3 more to go. I want to cut this short so obviously I can stay under 20 minutes like I said. As always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And I'll see you guys in the next 3 videos that I have coming this week.